G'day mates. Have you ever opened up your CommSec or Vanguard app, stared at that balance, and just felt nothing? Or maybe a bit of dread? You're wondering if you're actually making any real progress towards building wealth, or if you're just throwing money into a black hole. Maybe you've managed to stash away a few grand in a high-interest savings account, or perhaps you've been grinding away, working hard yakka for years, and you finally hit that $20,000 or $30,000 mark. But when you look at the property prices in Sydney or Melbourne, or you think about that elusive $1 million milestone, it feels impossibly far away, doesn't it? Like you're standing at the bottom of the Blue Mountains looking up, thinking, how on earth am I going to climb that in thongs? Well, grab yourself a cuppa, because what if I told you that once you reach your first $100,000, you're not just starting, you're actually way closer to becoming a millionaire than you reckon. In fact, mathematically speaking, you'd be exactly 1/3 of the way there. Yeah, I know. It sounds like a load of absolute rubbish, doesn't it? Like something a dodgy finfluencer would try to sell you on TikTok. But stick with me. My name's Lorchi, and I spend way too much of my spare time obsessing over money, compound interest, and trying to figure out why so many hardworking Aussies never seem to escape the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, even when they're earning decent coin. If you're someone who actually wants to understand how wealth building really works down under, instead of just buying a lottery ticket and hoping for the best, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if it helps you make sense of your finances. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Now, before we dive into the maths that makes this whole thing work, let me paint you a picture of what most people think wealth building looks like. Most blokes and Sheilas imagine it's this perfectly linear process. Like building a brick wall. You lay one brick, you're one brick closer. You save $1, you're $1 closer. Save 10 grand, you're 10 grand closer. Save 50 grand, you're 50 grand closer. Simple, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Actually, this kind of thinking is exactly why so many people spit the dummy and give up on investing before they ever see the real magic happen. They look at their measly account balance after a few years of sacrificing their avocado toast and their Friday Arvo schooners, and they think to themselves, mate, at this rate, I'll be 6 feet under before I ever hit $1 million. And honestly, if money worked the way most people think it does, linearly, they'd probably be right. It would take a lifetime of absolute slog. But here's the thing that changes everything. Money doesn't just sit there doing nothing when you invest it properly in the market. It starts working for you. It's like hiring a little army of workers who never sleep, never take a smoko, and never ask for penalty rates. They earn returns, and then those returns start earning their own returns. This isn't some get-rich-quick scheme or some crypto fairy tale. It's basic mathematics that has been creating millionaires from Bondi to Broome for decades. Yet somehow, most of us either don't understand it or we don't believe it actually works for regular people. The secret lies in understanding compound interest. Albert Einstein supposedly called it the 8th wonder of the world. Now, whether Einstein actually said that while enjoying a meat pie is debatable, but the sentiment is absolutely spot on. Those who understand compound interest earn it. Those who don't, well, they pay it. Usually to the banks in credit card interest. Let me show you exactly how this works with some real Aussie numbers that might just blow your mind. Imagine you decide to get serious. You decide to invest $150 every single week. That's roughly $650 a month. Now, I know what you're thinking. Lorchi, mate, have you seen the price of petrol? Have you seen my rent? I get it. The cost of living crisis, the Cozzie Livs, is real. But $150 a week isn't impossible for most working adults if you really look at where the leaks are in your budget. We are talking about the cost of a decent night out at the pub, or maybe skipping a few Uber Eats orders and making a spag bowl at home instead. Now, let's assume your investments earn an average return of 8% annually. This is actually quite conservative compared to the historical performance of the ASX 200 or the US markets over the long term, especially when you factor in franking credits here in Australia, but let's play it safe. Here is where things get interesting, and also where most people quit. It takes approximately 12 years of consistent weekly contributions to reach your first $100,000. 12 years. I can hear you groaning from here. That sounds like forever, especially when you're just starting out. You're thinking, 12 years? I'll have grey hair by then. But think about it this way. 12 years ago, were you the same person you are today? Time has a funny way of passing whether you're building wealth or not. You can spend the next 12 years complaining about house prices, or you can spend them building your first six-figure asset. During those first 12 years, this is the hard yakka phase. It's a slog. Most of the money accumulating in your account comes directly from your own pocket. You are doing the heavy lifting. Compound interest is there, but it's just warming up on the bench, putting on its boots. Out of that first $100,000, roughly $62,000 comes from your own weekly contributions. The remaining $38,000 is the returns your money has generated. Not bad for money that's just sitting there, right? But admittedly, $38,000 over 12 years isn't going to change your life overnight. You're not buying a waterfront mansion in Mosman with that. Here is where most people make a critical mistake. They look at those numbers and think the process is too slow. They get discouraged because the returns don't feel sexy enough compared to their mate Dave, who claims he made 50 grand on some obscure mining stock in a week. Spoiler alert, Dave is probably lying, or he lost it all the next week. What they don't realize is that by hitting $100,000, they've just completed the hardest part of the entire journey. They've built the concrete slab that will support the whole house. Remember, the goal is $1 million. You've just hit 100,000. Traditional thinking says you're only 10% of the way there. You're thinking, crikey, I have to do that 12-year slog 9 more times? No thanks. But compound interest doesn't work that way. The truth is far more exciting. From this point forward, your money starts pulling its weight. Those investment returns that seemed modest during the first 12 years begin to snowball. The next milestone is $200,000. And here is the kicker, mates. It only takes about 6 more years to get there. Let me repeat that because it's bloody important. It took you 12 years to go from 0 to 100,000, but only 6 years to double it to 200,000. You've cut the time in half. We are now 18 years into your journey. You're sitting on $200,000. The maths is shifting in your favor big time. At this point, compound interest is really flexing its muscles. Of that $200,000 balance, you've personally contributed roughly $94,000 through your weekly investments. The other $106,000? That's pure investment growth. This is the tipping point. This is the moment where your money is actually making more money than you are contributing. Your portfolio is now doing more work than your savings habit. But here is the part that will absolutely blow your mind. Even though you've only reached $200,000, mathematically, regarding the time it takes, you are actually halfway to becoming a millionaire. Not 1/5. Not 1/4. Halfway. This is where that original claim, that $100,000 is 1/3 of the way, starts to make sense. The reason this works is that compound interest is exponential. It's like a bushfire. It starts slow, but once it catches, it takes off. It's like pushing a Holden ute up a hill. The beginning is brutal. You're sweating, you're swearing, your back hurts. But once you crest that hill and the ute starts rolling down the other side, momentum takes over. You can barely keep up with it. Now, let's look at the final stretch. This is where things get genuinely addictive. During the next 18 years, as you continue making those exact same weekly contributions of $150, compound interest becomes the dominant force in your life. By the time you hit the 36-year mark, you've reached that coveted 7-figure milestone. $1 million dues. Here's the breakdown. You've personally contributed approximately $187,000 over more than 3 decades. But your account balance shows over $1 million. That means more than 80% of your wealth came from compound growth, not your own pocket. Think about what this means in practical terms. At this stage, your portfolio is fluctuating by thousands of dollars a day. In a good year, you're earning roughly $80,000 just from investment returns. Remember how long it took you to scrape together your first 100,000? 12 years. Now, your portfolio is generating almost that much every single year without you lifting a finger. You could be sleeping, you could be at a barbie, you could be surfing down at the Gold Coast. Your money is still working. Now, I know exactly what some of you cynics are thinking. I can hear you shouting at the screen. Lorchie, this sounds great in theory, mate, but what about inflation? $1 million won't buy a parking spot in Sydney in 30 years. What about market crashes? What if the ASX tanks? What about the fact that I can barely scrape together $50 at the end of the week, let alone 150? These are fair questions. Legit questions. But honestly, they're also the kind of questions that separate people who build wealth from people who spend their entire lives making excuses. Let's address the elephant in the room. Inflation. The 8% return I've been using in these calculations? That's conservative. The Australian share market historically returns closer to 9 or 10%, including dividends and franking credits. By using 8%, we are already building in a buffer for inflation. We are talking about real purchasing power here. And yes, $1 million might not buy you a mansion in 2055. But do you know what's worse than having $1 million that's worth slightly less? Having $0 that's worth absolutely nothing. What about market crashes? Oh, but Lorchi, what if the market drops 20%? Good. I hope it does. I know that sounds mental, but hear me out. When you're in the accumulation phase, when you're buying assets, you want prices to go down. When Woolies puts Tim Tams on half-price sale, do you panic and run out of the store screaming? No. You stock up. When the share market drops, your weekly $150 contribution buys more units. You're picking up shares on the cheap. When the market recovers, and history shows it always has eventually, those cheap units you bought during the dip become incredibly valuable. Now, let's talk about the I'm broke argument. I can't find $150 a week. I hear this a lot. And look, if you're on the dole or genuinely struggling to put food on the table, this advice isn't for you right now. Focus on survival. But for the average Aussie working full-time, I reckon most of us underestimate how much money slips through our fingers like sand. The average Aussie household spends hundreds a month on subscriptions they don't watch, gym memberships they don't use, and food delivery. Have you checked your Uber Eats history lately? It's confronting, mate. If you could cut back on just 2 takeaway meals a week, maybe bring your lunch to work instead of buying that $15 sandwich in the CBD, and brew your own coffee, you'd find that $150 pretty quick. I'm not saying you have to live like a monk. I'm not saying you can never have a smashed Avo again. But I am suggesting that most of us have more flexibility than we admit. It's about choices. Do you want the dopamine hit of a new gadget today? Or do you want financial freedom tomorrow? Now, here is something unique to us Aussies that makes this whole equation even better. Something the Yanks don't have. Superannuation. The maths I showed you before. That assumes you're doing this all on your own, with your after-tax income. But in Australia, your employer is legally required to contribute to your wealth building. Right now, the super guarantee is rising to 12%. That means for every dollar you earn, your boss is putting an extra 12 cents into your retirement pot. This is a cheat code, mates. If you earn an average salary, your super alone is doing a massive chunk of this heavy lifting for you. And if you decide to salary sacrifice, put a bit extra into super before tax, you're not only building wealth faster, you're saving on tax at the same time. The government is literally incentivizing you to get rich. So when I say it takes 12 years to hit $100,000, for many of you, if you combine your personal investing with your super balance, you're probably already there or very close to it. You might be richer than you think. Let's talk about the mental game. Why is reaching that $100,000 milestone such a psychological game changer? There's something magical that happens when you log in and see a 6-figure balance. Suddenly, the concept of being wealthy shifts from a fantasy to a realistic possibility. Before you hit 100,000, investment returns feel like pocket change. You get a dividend payment of $50 and you think, great, that buys me a carton of beer. Whoop-de-doo. But once you cross that threshold, annual returns can easily exceed $10,000. And in exceptional years, bull markets, you might see gains of $20,000 or more. These aren't theoretical numbers anymore. That's a new car. That's a dream holiday to Europe. That's a house deposit. This is when people start to understand viscerally why Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man, famously said, "The first 100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it." It's not just about the math. It's about the person you become in the process. The bloke or Sheila who successfully saves and invests their first 100,000 has proven something. They've proven they can delay gratification. They've proven they can stick to a plan through market volatility. They've proven they can prioritize long-term goals over buying the latest iPhone. These characteristics, discipline, patience, resilience, are the exact traits that will carry you to the $1 million mark. There's also the opportunity factor. Cash is freedom. Investments are options. When you have $100,000 sitting there, you walk taller. You don't have to take crap from a toxic boss because you know you have a safety net. Maybe a better job opportunity comes along, but it's with a startup that offers equity instead of a high salary. Without savings, you can't take that risk. With $100,000 behind you, you can afford to bet on yourself. Maybe you've always wanted to start your own trading business or a consulting gig, but you needed capital for tools and a ute. Or maybe the property market dips and you spot an incredible investment unit, but you need a deposit now. These scenarios happen constantly. Luck is just what happens when preparation meets opportunity. If you haven't done the prep, if you haven't built that first 100,000, the opportunity sails right past you. But here's the hard truth. The hardest part isn't the math. It isn't picking the right ETF. It isn't understanding franking credits. The hardest part is existing in a culture that screams by now, pay later. We live in a society obsessed with instant everything. Instant coffee, instant messages, Afterpay, Zip Pay, credit cards. The idea of waiting 12 years, let alone 36 years, sounds absolutely barbaric to most people. They'd rather finance an $80,000 Ford Ranger today and pay interest on it for 5 years than drive a reliable second-hand Toyota and invest the difference. They'd rather look rich than actually be rich. This is the keeping up with the Joneses trap. Or in Australia, maybe it's keeping up with the Hemsworths. The people who do build wealth aren't necessarily smarter. They aren't winning the lottery. They just have a different relationship with time. They understand that boring consistency beats exciting speculation every single time. While everyone else is chasing the latest crypto coin mentioned on a Facebook group, or trying to day trade mining stocks, successful investors are quietly adding to their index funds. Month after month, year after year. Rain, hail, or shine. Now, I can't give you personal financial advice. I'm just a bloke on the internet, not a financial advisor. You should always do your own research. But some of you are wondering, okay Lorchi, invest in what? Do I need to pick the next Afterpay? Do I need to find the next lithium miner? No. In fact, please don't. For the vast majority of us, a simple, low-cost index fund or ETF, exchange-traded fund, is all you need. Something that tracks the top companies in Australia, like the ASX 200 or ASX 300, and something that tracks the global market, like the USS and P500 or a total world index. Think Vanguard. Think BetaShares. You're not trying to beat the market. You're trying to be the market. And over long periods, simply matching the market average has created more millionaires than almost any other strategy. The ASX has survived world wars, recessions, pandemics, and terrible prime ministers. Betting against the continued growth of human innovation and productivity is a losing bet. Don't get fancy. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to be consistent. So there you have it, mates. Reaching $100,000 isn't just another milestone. It's the proof of concept. It's the turning point where gravity shifts and the hill starts sloping downwards. It means you're 1/3 of the way to $1 million, even if the dollar amount says otherwise. The math doesn't lie. If you haven't started yet, start today. I don't care if it's $50 a week. I don't care if it's $20. Just build the habit. Future you, the one sitting on a beach in retirement, sipping a cold one without a financial worry in the world, will look back and say, "You absolute legend. Thank you." If you found value in this, share it with a mate who needs a kick up the backside to start investing. Subscribe for more no-nonsense Aussie finance content. I'm Lorchi, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!